Hello and welcome to the Compass Conversations at Butler University podcast, where we talk about meaning and purpose at Butler and beyond. Enjoy the journey.
Compass Conversations is a new podcast series with the Compass Center at Butler University, formerly known as the Center for Faith and Vocation. In this series, I chat with Butler alumni about their career journeys of meaning and purpose, highlighting the important work they are doing in the world. My name is Julie Diltz, and I'm a Butler alumna and Butler volunteer. I feel most aligned with my purpose when I am connecting with people, learning new things, and contributing to the thriving of others. I loved this conversation with Dr. Kimberly Sterling, who received her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from Butler. She's the Vice President of Health Research within the Medical Affairs Organization at ResMed. She has her Master's of Science degree in Pharmaceutical Economics and Policy and has had an impressive career in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry. She's a deep thinker about meaning and purpose, leadership, and service. Enjoy as Kimberly shares her wisdom in this Compass Conversation. Hi, Kimberly. Welcome to Compass Conversations.
Thanks, Julie. I'm excited to be here today.
I am excited to have you. We are going to talk about what meaning and purpose look like in your life and maybe how that has evolved since your time at Butler and how meaning and purpose show up in your work life. First, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself professionally and personally.
Great. Well, I am Dr. Kimberly Sterling. I go by Kimberly or Kim. I have the privilege of working for a medical device company called ResMed. We are a digital health technology company, world leader in sleep health, also breathing health, and we have a residential care software business. And I am Vice President of Health Research within our Medical Affairs division there. Personally, I am a graduate of Butler University's College of Pharmacy, and so I have a long love and tie back to our college. I also currently serve as the chair of the Dean's Advisory Council for the College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. I've served on the Black Alumni Association as well. And so outside of my tie to Butler, as well as my professional life, I am a sister, I'm a daughter, I love music, I love hosting, I just love community involvement as well. And so I try to balance all of my responsibilities while still having time for myself. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Well, let's talk about meaning and purpose. You said some things even in your introduction that give hints at what's important to you, but what do you remember about how you thought about meaning and purpose and values? What was important to you when you were a student at Butler?
Being a pharmacy major, you know how rigorous the didactic classes are and the coursework. And I remember always on the first day of classes, my friends would say, okay, everyone meet back at this point on the campus yard in about 15 minutes because we know we won't have a full day of class or a full, class session. And I'd say, I'll see you guys at lunch or I'll see you at the end of the day because we're going to start immediately on that first day. So I say that because it is easy to be on campus and all you do is study. Study and go to class. But I feel like being on a college campus, there's this rich opportunity to explore, to learn about new cultures and people. And so for me, it was always about how do I enrich my experience while on campus and also find ways to be involved in community service. So while I was at Butler, I was part of sexual assault peer prevention group, member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I participated in some of the associations with pharmacy. I was part of the gospel choir we had.
Oh,
So I
awesome.
just tried to find ways to just be involved, not because I didn't want to live and breathe pharmacy, but I knew that wasn't going to be my whole life. Learning what you don't enjoy after trying it allows you to make different decisions when you're getting into the working environment. So anyway, let's come back to that at some point.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to just go there with you now. I'm afraid we'll forget as we get on to other topics. So please go ahead.
Sure, sure. So I have had the privilege of being a preceptor for pharmacy students. They're finishing up their last years at a variety of pharmacy schools. And what I always told them was never say you don't want to do something until you've tried it. And if you've
Yeah.
tried it, you said you don't like it, feel free to say that is not on the table for making decisions. As students or even as adults, as we're making decisions about where do we want to spend the bulk of our time during the day, which is usually at work when you leave campus, there are a lot of things that we have thoughts about that are not informed by data or facts.
Mm,
However, you've tried something and you know it's really not where you're thriving. And sometimes we can feel pressure to say yes to something, be true to yourself and say no to it. But it's only because you know that that's not what's best for you. And
yeah.
it also helps you to like make some good trade-offs for yourself so that you're not fully stressed at all times.
All of these are guidelines, right? Not fixed rules. You have to sort of know when to take a little pivot from what you hold mostly true, right? But
Absolutely.
that reminded me, I had a time at Roche where I had someone who served as a mentor for me and was giving me some advice. And I felt deep pressure to follow that advice. And there was just this inner knowing that that was not the right next thing for me to do. And it takes a lot to, I think, really be strong in the face of that external pressure to do things, that maybe aren't what are going to help you thrive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you're making decisions about your next steps, albeit within a company or outside of a company, we tend to get other people's inputs. And that's great because you want to have a more informed decision process. But if you have that gut feeling that this is not the best role for me,
Yeah.
and although you have a high-powered or influential mentor saying you really should do that, I encourage you not to. So just like you were talking
Yeah.
about, right? It's a little uncomfortable, but in my experience, and I can't remember if I said I currently work for ResMed. I think I talked about who we were, but I didn't say
Yeah.
the company. I started off my career after grad school at Eli Lilly and Company. And there was this opportunity that came up because I had interacted with someone in my current role who was starting up a new group and said, I think this will be great. And I'm thinking, this is not on my plan of how I'm going to send the ladder.
Yeah.
I went to a mentor and they're like, I'm not sure why you would do that. And I was like,
Yeah.
this seems interesting. I love to learn new things and I get bored easily because of
Yeah.
that. And I remember after a year, I had a chance to interact with him again. He was like, that was such a smart move.
Oh,
So even
yeah.
people
Yeah.
who are higher up or where you want to be, sometimes they look at your journey and the decisions you've made and they actually see like, oh, I get it now. And that
Yeah.
rich your understanding about our business, which then can be leveraged later. So yeah, I think that's great, and I'm so glad you brought that up. And so that's just bringing back other memories from other parts of my professional career.
Well, I started with asking what your values were, what was important to you while you were at Butler. And let me come back to that because I love to hear kind of what happens that causes people to shift, evolve, or to sort of clarify. So maybe thinking about what's important today, how you think about your values today. Has anything changed? Or what are those milestone experiences that have maybe clarified or shifted your thinking?
So I talked about while being on Butler's campus, really being mission driven, of service to other people. Hence why I went into healthcare um, initially. And so that's still very much part of what drives me, what helps me assess, am I happy in my role? Is it time for a new one? Am I happy at my company even?
Yeah.
And so I didn't go into practice traditional pharmacy. I actually went to grad school to USC and did a fellowship master's program in pharmaceutical economics and health policy. So I knew I wanted to do something research related, more communication of it,
Mm.
and really in health policy area. And so my first role at Eli Lilly and Company was really in a department where I had the ability to communicate information to insurance companies, state Medicaids, and other healthcare decision makers who are making population decisions on
Mhm.
whether patients got access to the medicines that we produced as a company. And so for me, what has always been kind of like my guiding principle is I want to be in a position to enable patients to get the healthcare that they need.
Mm.
And that's through information, whether I am just communicating the information that someone else is producing, or if I'm producing it as a researcher, or I'm leading a team who now has that ability to produce and then also communicate. And so as I have navigated my professional career, there have been times when I have had to go back and really like anchor in because I've had some really hard conversations,
Mm.
or a project's not going the direction that I want, to say, okay, why am I here, to kind of center back on that.
Mm.
I also think that it's important to know that we will never get things 100% correct. I'm a recovering perfectionist.
Mm.
And I bring that up because we can learn so much from failure. That experience of not excelling can be a setback. But instead, I say after kind of giving yourself a little time to heal, to really reflect on what could I have done differently? What did I learn?
Mhm.
And how can I use that in the next initiative, project, next role, etc. And what I tell my team, because I lead a organization of about 20 plus people, is let's fail fast. Let's experiment, let's learn, and then let's dust it off and then move forward and make different decisions based on what we've experienced. And I think, and maybe things have changed in school now, but I don't think we talk about how you really cherish those hard experiences where
Yeah.
things haven't gone well,
Yeah.
because that then propels you.
I love that. And it resonates deeply with me. We could talk about being recovering perfectionists for a long time. What happened that helped you identify that about yourself and seek to change it?
I think a lot of it was just spending time with mentors to kind
Hmm.
of talk
Yeah.
about challenges.
Yeah.
I am a woman of faith, Christian faith, and so I also take a lot from uh, stories in the Bible and just thinking about challenges and what I've seen in my life of God helping me through those challenges. And I'll tell a really quick story of um, near the end of my career at a particular company. I was in a sort of newish leadership role, and I had a switch in supervisors, and I was thriving on under the original supervisor. Under this new one, just wasn't. And I spent
Hmm.
a year and a half, like literally striving to like change and to become this person that I thought this individual was trying to get me to be. And by the end of it, I lost sight of who I was as a leader
Yeah.
because I was trying to become this other person. When I finally had an executive coach say, you have a decision to make. Here are your options. Go think about it. And I came back and I said, I think it's time for me to leave.
Hmm.
And the amount of weight that fell off. And I literally that weekend had friends say, Kim's back. And I'm like, what
Oh,
do you mean? They're like, you have not been yourself for the last year and a half. And that was striking. And I think it's
yes.
up to, when you know who you are and your values. And while feedback is absolutely a gift, try to take the feedback and glean from it what you think is most important. But at the end of the day, don't change who you are.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you are someone else, you're not going to be able to to really thrive within your profession. And so I've always taken that as always remembering I have options and I
Mhm.
don't have to be this person that someone wants me to be if that's not truly who I am. And that has really empowered me to make really great decisions, even when I've had like a layoff from a
Yeah.
company.
Yep.
I always say it was the best thing ever because it actually led me to my current company. And it gave me a chance to reimagine what was possible. And so that's what I always encourage people to really think about.
I love it. I'm sitting here having just started a new role after taking some time off from after being laid off.
Yeah.
So we do have these bumps along the road, even as successful professionals with lots of experience and lots of people who would vouch for us and speak to our strengths and want us in their organizations. These things still happen. Yeah, so a lot to learn there. So you have talked a little bit about some career twists and turns, and maybe even some things that you've relied on. You mentioned your faith. Is there anything else you want to share about kind of how you've navigated some of those twists and turns, or have we covered that one?
So when I was early in my career, I thought, okay, you just kind of move up the ladder. And I've never really thought about taking, what do we call those? Lateral
Uh-huh.
expenses or moves,
Yeah.
which is where you're not getting a new title or a higher level at a company, but you're taking a new opportunity to step outside of what's your core and going to a new department, either to learn something new or you're just interested, or maybe they have the skill sets you have and they want to leverage it very differently.
Hmm.
And so, with that first experience of someone saying, "Hey, I would love you to come over to compliance and ethics and help us with what we're doing," I began to really be open to new experiences.
Mm,
And what I have found to be the most fulfilling is not necessarily trying to move up a proverbial career ladder, but it's been about the role. What do I get to learn that's new?
hmm.
Can I leverage what I know and really bring experience to the role to do something differently? And that has literally helped me in my career. And I tell people like I have struggled in other areas of my life. Career tends not to be the place that I struggle.
Yeah.
And probably it's because I'm very open to new ideas. Now, there are positions I will never take again. I have
Hmm.
I glean the information, but I know I'm not going to do a certain position, and that also again frees you up to make really good decisions for your next steps.
Yes, that's great. I do think that we as a culture put a lot of value on accomplishment, excellence, achievement. And I think about this a lot because, of course, like we want to do well in the world, but I've asked myself a lot over the last couple of years, like to what end? To what end am I striving? And I've had some unlearning to do in that space, which is why I think the conversations about meaning and values are so important, right? That is the end. What is it that's important? I love that you knew from a very young age, to think about why am I here? Why am I doing this?
Yeah. And I think it's because I come from a long line of teachers
Oh,
on my
yeah.
dad's side. And then my mom was an immigrant. She's passed on now, but she
Mhm.
came here from Costa Rica,
Ah,
and her desire was for her kids to like take full opportunities of the educational system. She's like, don't worry about getting married, it'll come. And
yeah.
I'm that might have been the one advice that you did not do well with, mom. But for
Yeah.
her, it was always about I may not have all the education in the world, but I can serve. And so
Yeah.
I remember at Thanksgiving or Christmas time, we would go and deliver food baskets to people. She worked for a hospital in Chicago, and so they had a list of, I think, patients or people who have expressed needs, and we would go and give baskets out. And it would be such a fun time.
Yeah.
that, or through our church and Sunday school, we would go and do community service projects. And so that just continued. And I think that is like, for me, service is so important, and
Mm,
why, whether I have a lot of time or a little bit of time, I'm constantly thinking about others
yeah.
a lot more. In my leadership role, our number one job as leaders is to think about our people. And I
Hmm.
try to tell them, and I have a new team that I'm building, and I told them, like, hey, you are my number one priority. Yes, the business work is important,
Yeah.
but if we don't spend enough time really getting to know each other, understanding how we best work, how do we develop our people, we're
Yeah.
actually not doing our jobs as leaders. So
Yeah.
another privilege that I get at where I am right now in my career.
I love that. I think that by and large, people on teams are highly motivated and highly capable, and the business work will get done because they've been given an assignment and they're going to take care of it. And they do that more effectively when they are connected to the people that they're working with as humans. So I love your leadership style and philosophy. Um, you were talking about service, and one of the questions I was thinking about is, like, with all of the needs in the world, how do you decide where to serve?
Such a great question. Sometimes it is based on what I have time to do.
Hmm.
But I also went through a program called Options through the Women's Fund of
Yep.
Central Indiana, and where it talks about having a philanthropy plan. Um, and it exposed me to so many nonprofits that are doing great work.
Mm,
And especially thinking about empowering women and girls and changing their lives in Central Indiana, which is something that I deeply resonate with.
mhm,
So, what I have come to decide is that I will reserve time to serve. And so, right now, with some of my board activities or association, positions, that is service. I'm also still very active with my sorority, and so that's another part of service. Because of the job that I have and the amount of travel, there's not a lot of room left for a lot more than that. And so
mhm,
I do think about how can I use my treasures, so my dollars, to enable great work to be done. And for me, that
mhm,
is where I've sponsored missionaries, I've, supported local nonprofits. If I've had a little bit of time, I'll go and volunteer for a friend's nonprofit, just to kind of see how they're transforming a community within Indianapolis. That is like super exciting. And then I also try to amplify great work that others are doing. And so that's the way
mm,
I've tried to figure out, how do I spend my time and still very much be tied to service. And then I also give back at my company, where I have been in employee resource group leader,
mhm.
or participant, or an executive sponsor, or even when we have fundraisers.
I hear deep intentionality. I love the idea of a philanthropy plan. And again, I think that's part of this whole conversation or series, is the idea of being intentional about where you invest your time, and money, and all of those things. That's so great. Okay, couple more questions maybe. What about practices, habits, or rituals that you follow to keep meaning and purpose front and center for you on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever that looks like?
Yeah. So I try to start my mornings off by spending time with the Lord. I have
Yeah.
found, if I am not centered on what's most important, I get distracted by the small menial things. And
Yes.
something you probably would not tell from this interview is I'm actually an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert. And
Yes.
so I also just need time to recharge. And because my day is spent on Zooms and Teams calls with people all day long, I just need that time to get refreshed and restored. And so I find that being really important with doing daily devotions, reading through my Bible, praying, even listening to worship music. That sets my day off.
Mhm.
I also try to make sure that I'm connecting with people because I'm very much an achiever and have this responsibility, like these two strengths very high in my strengths profile. I can get really heads down and just work.
Yes.
Is lifting my head and connecting meaningfully with people, which not just people at work, but friends, with family members, making sure that I'm also connecting at church because it can be really easy to stay at home and watch virtually
Yeah.
versus connecting like live on Sundays, again, being refilled. And so those are ways that I do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I also listen to a lot of audiobooks as I travel. So not always about meaning and purpose, but also just getting lost in other worlds and
Hmm.
allowing myself to relax and not take myself so seriously. I have found those things to be deeply helpful in staying true to mission and value.
Is there any particular resource, book, podcast, anything that you want to share that has been particularly impactful for you?
So another kind of transformative moment was when my mother passed back in 2020. Right before she passed, I was just asked to build out a team, take on a leadership role. And so my mom passes like the next month. And then I'm like trying to help my dad with getting everything settled. And I'm supposed to go back to work and I just couldn't do it. And I think my dad had ended up going back to Chicago. And so I was on the couch. And when you're in the midst of grief, you just sometimes have to just feel it. And it's
Yeah.
nothing you can fully prepare for, and it ebbs and it flows. And when it's really fresh, sometimes you just want things to take your mind off. And I was in my Netflix app and saw Brene Brown had a Netflix special called Call Courage. And that deeply resonated with me because as I was starting this new leadership role, it was after about a 4.5 year break from leading because of my really
Mm.
hard experience at one other company. And I was a bit nervous to take on this leadership role,
Hmm.
having really not a failure, like if we can be completely honest here. And what she spoke about was vulnerability and the power of vulnerability. And because I was so emotionally spent and raw, I think I was able to receive that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get it. The most meaningful thing is about being vulnerable and transparent with your people so they can connect with you, that they see that you are imperfect too, and that we're figuring this out together. And so that is one that I highly encourage people to take a look at. It's
I love
short.
it.
I also think that the way Brene Brown really thinks about or talks about leadership and purpose in your life is great. For any of you who are campus leaders or want to be a leader on your job, learning the power of vulnerability is literally transformative. And you come out of college, understanding that, you're going to be light years ahead of most of the adults that you will interact with in your early career.
You are a wise woman, and I'm so appreciative of your willingness to have a conversation with me and share that wisdom with the Butler students and anyone else who might happen to tune in. It has been an absolute pleasure.
I have loved this. Thank you for allowing me to go down memory lane as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Really
Excellent.
look
Very
forward to
good.
more chats with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kimberly.